Evolution is the only option. Adversity is absolutely 100% inevitable. The degree of that adversity can vastly vary, but no matter what the goal you reach or what circumstance you find yourself in, you will find problems. With these problems, you have two options. 1, dwell on them and stay where you are, or 2, evolve. There's certainly a place for number 1, but staying there for too long is a recipe for disaster. No matter what the circumstance is, no matter what the problem is, no matter where you were at once in your life, you must evolve, because you can never go back to what once was, but you can and will create what is to come.
Mike's way.
Mike's way.
Mike's in the corner. Mike's in the corner. Mike's way. All right. Dylan, start off.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Relaxed and Fast. Today we are going to be talking about confidence and why that's important and the different things that go into that. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it, Andy.
Yeah, Coach, the first kind of intro question I want before I dive into the rest of the questions I have here is as an athlete, especially in our sport, why is confidence so important?
Why is confidence important in anything, right?
Yes.
The ability to believe in yourself, especially, our sport is one of the most challenging mental things that you can do to yourself. We're trying to push your body to a limit and going against every natural instinct that evolution has created. And so believing in yourself, believing in your ability, believing in your training, believing that you have the fitness to work through the pain and the discomfort and the uncomfortableness of everything that is happening is just so vitally important, because if you don't believe in any of that, it doesn't really matter how fit you are, you won't be successful. Mm-hmm. And that comes back to negativity works 100% of the time, and it's always negative. And so if you can have the belief and have the thought process and focus on the things that you need to do to be successful, and you've done it before, and you've been able to replicate that, then that should give you the confidence to go on and do the things that you're trying to do.
And I think that a good example of that is in today's society, you see a lot of these trendy workouts on Instagram and stuff, and a lot of people believe that there's a miracle pill out there and one thing that you can do that's just going to make you great. But, dude, the confidence, along with consistency, is the biggest part. Confidence and consistency. Without one, then the other one isn't effective. There's a reason why, people see this as a downside with Jakob Ingebrigtsen. They call him cocky, and they call him arrogant, which maybe to an extent he is. But even looking at that, you cannot say that man is not confident. Mm-hmm. He is incredibly confident, and he is able to, even when he's had races where he's sick and he's not on his best form, he has been injured for a long time, he will still go out there, and maybe he won't live up to what he's saying, but a bad day for Jakob Ingebrigtsen is still like top 5 in a world stage.
Yeah.
Like, that is pretty incredible. On a day where he is not on his best form, he's still top 5.
Yeah. I guess the question I would have going off of that is how do you build and gain that confidence, like, just starting out? Like how do you lay that foundation and build that confidence?
I built that confidence through workouts and being able to run at a certain level, and workouts gave me the confidence to know that I could do that once I stepped on the line to race. And so the times where I was racing really well, my workouts were going really well. And the times where I wasn't racing very well, it typically came back to I was struggling in the workouts, and I didn't believe in my ability through those workouts. So that for me, that's how I try to hopefully help build confidence through all of you too, is, I think there is something as overconfident too, right? Not everybody can break 4 minutes in the mile, and if you're a 4:30 miler and you go out in 60 seconds and you think you're going to break 4 minutes on that day, like, and that's what's a really difficult conversation for me to have is I'll say, a kid will come in and say, what do you want me to do, or what do you think I can do for this race? And my question back to them is, what do you think you can do for this race? And when they're like, oh, I think I can do this, that's like 30 seconds faster than what they're projected to do, it's like, okay, well, this is what your workouts are showing, why don't you start with this first? And then if you feel good at the end of the race, then by all means progress through, but going out at this pace is probably not the best idea because this is where your fitness level is.
Proportionately in those conversations, do you think you see more of the overconfidence or underconfidence, and does it change with age and things like that?
I think it just depends on the individual. Hopefully, as you get older, you start to realize where your fitness level is and understand what we're trying to do with the workouts and how to go about that.
Do you feel like you have more conversations of building confidence or like reining
Yeah, I
it
think
in?
once again, I think it just kind of depends on the person. There's plenty of people that are really, really fit who struggle with their confidence or they don't execute the way that they should, and so trying to pump them up and talk to them about all of the great things that they have done and believing in a known quantity for them can be also just as challenging at times. And so once again, I think it's not necessarily, it's more individualized than it is like based on year, I think. The hope is as you get older, you start to recognize where your fitness level is, and then you're having conversations from there. But I think some of it just depends on the different season that you're in. Like somebody might be really confident during indoor or not confident during indoor, and then they become confident outdoors, or vice versa. And just because of how training is going, or oh, I got sick, or oh, I broke up with my significant other, or all of those factors kind of come into it too. What's going on in your life can have a big factor in it.
And to get kind of the difference between them, out ahead of this conversation, so we can really focus on confidence. You said there is that overconfidence. I'm where's that line of you've already used the word cocky, Dylan, of the confidence versus cocky, or the confidence versus ignorance, or even the other side of that, the confidence versus trying to be confident when you're trying to be humble. I don't know, where's the line in some of that stuff?
I think in order to be confident, you have to have a little bit of cockiness. You have to have that belief in yourself. And if you don't have that, I don't... It would be interesting to truly know Jakob Ingebrigtsen and know what he says behind closed doors. I watched his documentary this past summer, and you got a little bit of that in hearing him talk after his Olympic 1500 race, and I view him very differently having watched that now than I did before. And I think he... I don't think he's the person that he puts out there as much as it is. But I think part of that is probably him trying to build his own confidence up and trying to bolster his own, psyche into the things that he can do. Because the more that you say things, the more likely it is to happen. You can will things into existence.
Absolutely.
As well. And so for him to be out there and saying I can't be beaten and all of those things, that is going to go through his head a lot more during races than, oh, you can't do this, blah, 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 which nobody succeeds when that stuff starts rolling through.
And the biggest example of that is Noah Lyles, dude. He is a huge proponent. He talks about he had terrible anxiety in the early years of his professional career. So he talks about he talked to his therapist. His therapist was like, be cocky. Because that's obviously... It's different for different people, but for him as an individual, he developed this character essentially where he goes out on that track and he is putting a performance on, dude. He is being very, very flamboyant about his confidence, and he's gonna wear chains and he's gonna do all this stuff and wear these crazy outfits because that projection of that confidence to him, it helps him absorb that. And obviously we're seeing now he's an Olympic champion, he's seeing a lot of success But also, I want to reiterate, it is different for every person. Like, for some people you might be putting too much pressure on yourself. So it's about having a conversation with yourself. I always say that, having a conversation with yourself and figuring out what you can take and tweaking little things. Like, for me, personally, this whole indoor season was about figuring out what I have to do pre-race in order to race and get rid of that anxiety. So, like, I tried going out and, like, jumping around and, like, talking to myself, and that was a little bit too much, so I dialed it back a little bit, and I found a sweet spot for myself personally. Some people, they go on the line and it's just 0 dark 30 mode. No emotion, and they go and they race great. I can't do that. I get very jittery, I get very in my head, so I need to have some sort of, like, I need to have a song in my head, I need to be ready to go, and then some people need to go out there and punch themselves in the head and be reared up and ready to go, but again, there's...
Being concussed helps.
Exactly, yeah. Gets rid of a lot of the pain. The brain cells are a detriment.
I agree. I think, and we talk about this a lot, right? The arousal state.
Absolutely.
Where do you need your arousal state to be, and figuring that out, and that becomes part of the routine of how do I get ready to race, and where do I need that arousal state to be at, and making sure that you can find a way to replicate that, and practicing it during practice and during workouts, and getting yourself to that point and dialed in and all that kind of stuff is really important.
What is the biggest contributor to confidence? Like, what contributes the most to confidence? If that makes sense.
Once again, I think to me it's the showing that I have the ability to do it in workouts, and through I was always confident through my training. I could go out and hammer a long run and cut down and run, the last 3 or 4 miles at this awesome pace, and then come back a couple days later and just rip this huge workout and run at or faster than the paces that I'm trying to run come race day, and do it with short rest, and like those gave me a ton of confidence that I was at the fitness level that I needed to be at. And then it just becomes, for me, it was I have to get to 1,200 meters as fast as I possibly can, and just trust that my kick is still going to be there. And so that ultimately was what it came down to for me. And
I think the key word there is kind of like the trust piece of how do you get yourself to trust what you've done and what you've like prepped for. When you look at any of read the books, when you do the worksheets, whatever on like building confidence, a lot of it's just reframing and reiterating to yourself what you have done. Like when you do the confidence journaling and things like that, it's usually like list 3 beneficial things to practice today, even on your bad day, and like starting to accumulate those good things, and then like having the trust in those good things to see them start stacking. In one way or another, it's usually reframing what you have done and what you have done well, or what you have taken from what you haven't done well. Like even if it's something bad, but it's a lesson you've taken from it, and collecting the like goods that then you can like trust to like lean back on is most of the exercises and things like that.
And I think touching on what Eby said, when you have a good workout, really, really take that in and gain confidence from that. But when you have a bad workout, do not let that rip you apart. I've talked about this in previous episodes. I'm going to continue to talk about this. The rule of thirds is something that so many coaches and professional athletes talk of. The rule of thirds is essentially a third of your workouts are going to be really, really good. A third of them are going to be passable, okay, and a third of them are going to be really, really bad. So if you have a string of 10 really, really bad workouts in a row, you should start to be worried. But if you have one bad workout, I guarantee you every single person that has ever stepped on a track before for any period of time is going to have a bad workout. There's certain things that you can't control. Sometimes you're not going to get enough sleep. Sometimes life happens, So if it's something out of your control, do not let that derail you. Take strength from the things that went well, but don't take bad things from the things that don't go well,
I think it's important as like humans to pay attention to that without training, you can train your brain to act differently, but we remember the negative more than the positive, and like emotionally the attachment that we have to negative things sometimes outweighs it. So like when you think about something, it usually, when you tell the story again, it seems way worse than it was maybe in the moment. So that's why it's also like important, like you said, to like absorb the good things and write down the good things to try to outweigh the bad. or the mundane, I guess, too.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
You want to talk about fake it till you make it?
Yeah. That's a big thing. Even when Coach Alessia used to come and run with us, that she's someone who ran really well in college, super fit. She took some time off and then hopped back in and helped me with a bunch of my workouts. And she's so fit, but the way she would hop back in was she really preached the just fake it till you make it sometimes, of just similar things that you get with Ingram Brits, that you just have to fake it sometimes. And it's not that you're really faking it, but you have to fake yourself into believing something bigger sometimes to do it. That you have the training, but sometimes the I don't want to say gaslighting yourself into it. That's not the word I'm going for, but sometimes you just got to hype yourself up to have the confidence. And I think about, Dylan talked about the persona piece of it and the wearing the chains, that you can talk about alter egos, and that's a whole thing that you put on. And the women's team are big believers in look good, feel good, that we have our super suit days for big workouts. You wear your favorite sports bra, your favorite shorts, something that's gonna make you feel confident, and that's contagious in a sense of, I don't necessarily claim my alter ego, but I had to do an exercise in my psychology and coaching class for alter egos, and my speed suit was what I used. I have the speed suit I get to wear, and it's part of the reason we wear something different at nationals. There's a different piece to that it brings a different, little bit of a chip on your shoulder. To be the only ones wearing a speed suit at the national meet is crazy sometimes. But getting to have that in meets is something I saved for big meets. But when I put that on, there's a little bit more weight to it that adds a little bit of oomph to that day. And it's something I only thought was a me thing that I noticed until we went to one of the meets my senior year, and I put it on to run the Mile Ash. I ended up running 4:54 that day, and some of the other girls from other teams, standing on the sides, we had other teammates standing on the sides, they overheard them being oh shit, Hope's got the speed suit on today, they're screwed, she has the speed suit on, and I hadn't realized anybody else was paying attention to that, but that's what I was using it for, was an extra confidence boost on that day. And when I really need some extra strength, Abby Collier and I are okay, speed suit day, pull it out, we got a little extra oomph today, and anything to push that confidence further.
And I think a more internalized version of that, this is sort of, I don't do this all the time, but this is, I kind of call it my last resort mental thing. When I'm having a day where I just can't get into it, I envision myself like a movie character. I'm about to go into the climax part of say you're in a Rocky movie or any sort of sports movie, and I will pick a song. Normally it ends up being R.I.P. Roach by XXXTentacion. And I remember distinctly I did this at the Terre Haute meet during cross country. I just woke up that morning, I was tired. I felt confident, I felt good, but there was just something off, and I was so I start blasting this really, really aggressive song in my headphones, and I'm sitting there, I was just playing it on repeat. And I just started getting so fired up, dude. And I'm smiling, and I'm sitting there, and I'm I am the main character right now. There was something in my head, and then we got about 5K into that 8K, and I was in some of the worst pain ever. But I distinctly remember you come back down that starting stretch about a little over halfway into the Terre Haute, and I distinctly remember being in that part and just smiling. I was I am the main character. And I moved up and I started passing people, and that ended up being a huge breakout race for me. One of still probably the best cross-country race of my life. So I think that's a very, very, very interesting thing that you can do, an alter ego or a main character perspective.
That's actually a good point. That's a good perspective. Yeah, I don't even know if I can respond to that in real time right now. I'm gonna have to process that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to process that.
I was the same way. I had special shorts that I wore for workout days, and I saved those to wear them in workouts, and I had my special white jersey with the purple stripe across it any time that I was going after a big time. And my dad was the same way. He'd be oh, Joe's trying to run fast today, he's gonna get after it. And I think it is having those little things that can kind of get you going helps. I think it helps a ton.
I know you three can totally relate to this, but for girls, a lot of it's our hair. That's a big thing. With the women's team is how you do your hair that day, and everybody has their special hairstyles, or whether I put 2 bubbles in versus 3 bubbles in has different mental triggers. It's one of those things that I think on the women's running scene that Colin Quigley all the time talks about her race braids, and Fast Braid Friday is a whole thing that I think's interesting and just finding what that is for you.
It's fun. As I'm growing my hair out, like sometimes I'll have a day where I like don't have time to do it up as much, and I feel frazzled when I get over to a workout or something. When I have time to like put a headband in and like put my product in and stuff, I feel so much more. It's little stuff like that. It's funny.
It's intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
It's really what
Absolutely.
it is. It's
Yeah.
something that's intentional. So again, it's just the collecting the trust piece and being intentional
Well,
about what you're doing.
I had my rock wristband that I would
Yeah.
always.
It's
This
just-
skull and crossbone wristband that.
I think it falls back in your habits and your routines too.
Yep,
Like
100%.
your routines give you confidence of I'm worried about my watch. A lot of people don't like to race with watches. I don't start it, but every workout I have my watch on. So I'm running my race with my watch. Like what can I keep consistent that makes me feel more comfortable? And comfortable comes confidence.
There is an interesting thing. There is this guy who did esports, and he was the world champion in some game, right? But and that doesn't matter. But I just remember they like interviewed this dude. I saw it on Instagram, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I kind of just came here and like looked around at the environment, and like I'm in a different environment, and I just kind of like sat the same way in my chair and laid back a little bit and just acted like I was playing from my room." And he won the championship because he was just comfortable in his environment. It was like what came natural to him.
Mm-hmm.
So he was able to play at that level, and he like won that championship. I'm not an esports fan, but I did see that, and that kind of that's what that
really
reminded me of. Is he was like, yeah, they're like, how did you handle all of, like the atmosphere here, right? It was his first ever tournament or whatever, and he's like, yeah, man, I just kind of came here and did the same stuff I would do if I was getting on a game at my house, and he ended up winning that championship. But then. And honestly, that actually kind of leads me into the next question I had written down. How do you stay calm and confident when you're racing really good people? When you're at a national tournament or OAC championship or a conference championship, regional championship, how do you stay calm?
Routine. I think routine is just such a big thing, and that's why we try to keep our warm up the same. And you know what you guys do prior to workouts is supposed to be the same as what you're doing prior to a race day. I think. You know, when we go to nationals, we will go over to the facility and kind of check out the facility, but I also try to not do it when everybody else is over there.
Yeah.
And we try to stay away a little bit from some of that stuff because I think sometimes that can add a little bit of extra pressure. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I intentionally do some of those things to try to make it as normal of a experience as we possibly can.
And I want to reiterate, we don't just like go and look at the venue and leave. Like, I'll walk some laps and do visualization. I go and find exactly where I'm gonna sit and do my like mental mapping, or where am I gonna go to the bathroom? Where am I gonna meet? Like we like make a point to find all of the like key places so that the second time you see it or the third time you see it, it's like, oh, okay, I'm familiar with this now.
Yeah.
That you're not trying to find those things or trying to make yourself comfortable. That once you've seen the facility, we try to go as soon as possible usually, because then you get 2 days to have a picture in your head of what it's going to look like, where you're going to be.
And we'll go check out the check-in tents, the different check-in
Everything.
tents. And
Everything.
I always thought the story that you have about Hastings kind of answers this question when I wrote it out. I was like, that story about Hastings and how she was nervous for conference or whatever. Yeah. If you, I don't know if you wanted to touch on the story. You said it in another episode.
Yeah,
but
so she said that leading into her senior year indoor conference meet, she was really nervous, and so she called Kelly Brennan.
Yep.
And she's like, well, what's your suggestion? Like, how do I handle these nerves? I know you've been in this situation before where you've been kind of the top seed in all these different events. And Kelly was like, well, you just need to remember that while you're nervous, everybody else is essentially shitting themselves that you're standing on the line next to them, and that they're really nervous that you're in the race, and remember who you are and what you've done, and just go do that.
That story, I feel like that story just fits this so well.
Yeah.
Of like the remembrance of what you've done, the resume you've built, because even Goggins says stuff like that.
It's interesting because I think Hastings is such a unique person just in general, and she exuded a ton of confidence, but she was not always a very confident person. And she really struggled with a lot of doubt, and that was something that we worked immensely on in her 4 years here. And she still even struggled with it a little bit, but she came a long ways from where she was as a freshman to where she was as a senior. And she carried herself so well in those moments that, and she is the toughest human being I've ever met. She is just an absolute badass, and she always exuded that. But behind closed doors, we would have very different conversations, and it took a while to kind of get her to that point where, she could stand on the line and just be like, I don't care, I'm just going to go do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going to really go for it and just see what happens.
And Hope mentioned the word visualization there. And I think if you listen to most interviews of a professional athlete who's winning a big title, I guarantee they're going to say something about, this is just how I visualized it. And you're hearing it more and more in the Instagram world, like, visualization is such a powerful tool. If you can just sit down, there's so many different techniques. In the previous episode, we've talked about Wim Hof many times, and that's any form of meditation or visualization where you can just sit down and, let's say you're trying to win an Olympic gold. You just sit down and replay that image of different parts of the race. It could be you crossing the line, you starting. What position do you want to be in when you're 1,200 meters in and you're getting on the final bell lap? Like, different pieces. So not just the night before or 20 minutes before the race, but months, years, days out from the race, working on that visualization. And like Coach said, willing it into existence. That is a real thing that you can do. If you believe in something enough, it will manifest into reality. If you're doing an action, it'll come to reality.
And honestly, this is part of the reason why I like the 10-minute toughness so much, is because you're supposed to be doing 10 minutes of different types of visualization and your identity statements and so on and so forth. And I think if you can consistently do something similar to that every single day, and you're just spending 10 minutes on it, then you continue to build that. It becomes part of your routine, and you can build that in. But then you also are running that race, because you're supposed to visualize for a handful of minutes your upcoming race, and then the next one is supposed to be like the goal race. So what is Oberlin would be this one, and then Nationals or Twilight would be the goal race, right?
Yeah.
The one that's going to get you into the big race. And so if you're going over those multiple times, and where you want to see yourself and how you want to position yourself in those different races, and then what do you need to do to be successful at practice today, and so that's another thing, that if you're being intentional and thinking through, like, what does a successful day look like, and then after practice is done, okay, what did I do well? And so all of this takes roughly 10 to 15 minutes, and it can be such a huge, powerful thing for your brain, and then you can start to build confidence off of that.
And I think that another thing that is not talked about enough is, if you're in this big environment, let's say you're at a national meet, how are you supposed to perform your best when you're in this new foreign environment, when there's a lot of people, like, you're not feeling good on, if you're not feeling good on a workout, you just drop out a couple of reps in, obviously. Like,
yeah.
there's that's something that I struggled with for 5+ years. It took so long to click in my head that like I would have a bad workout, and I would just, like, a couple reps in, I'd be like, oh, well, I don't want to see that time on the clock, so I would just drop out. And if you are, that will become a habit if you let it become a habit. So it's little things like, now I'm injured and I'm cross training. So I got an hour into my 2-hour bike ride today, and I just didn't want to be there. I was very, very, I just wanted to do nothing related to biking. So I got at that point, and I've been repeating in my head, I live for the pain, I live in the pain, I love the pain. Like, that, mantras, we always talk about mantras, and the pain is where you develop. The suffering is where confidence comes from. It becomes, I think it becomes cockiness or arrogance when it's not based in anything, when you don't have any actual proof that you've done that before. Yeah. let's say I've never played water polo a day in my life. If I go out there and say I'm going to be national champion in water polo right now, obviously that's cockiness because I've never freaking played it before.
Yeah.
But I'm in the bike room for 2+ hours a day. I'm on the track every single day. I'm doing my correctives for multiple hours a day. So I have some sort of base to say that I want to do this. I want this goal, you know? So it's not just proving yourself, but, you know, proving to yourself and proving, I don't want to say proving to others because that's unhealthy. That's a whole separate thing, but just proving to everybody that you have put the work in and you deserve to be there, you know?
So,
I will say, I don't think it's bad to be confident in a goal that you're going to work towards. You
Yes,
have genuine
yes.
intention to, because I think about somebody who did do that is Christian Pfeiffer. He, like, 2 high jumps in was like, I'm going to be a national champion. I remember being like, dude, like, can we just make it to conference first? But here he is now, like, a national championship, 3-time All-American, like, he didn't just do that and do nothing, though. He said that with full intention to put the work in.
Yeah.
So, like, you can have confidence in a goal that you, like, are headed towards. So I think, like you said, it's not, you have to be willing to put the work in, too, for the basis.
That's
both ways.
the big thing.
I
No
used
one,
to be like, dude.
no one will ever shame you if you set a goal and you don't achieve it, but you genuinely put all the work in. You will never be shamed. But
So,
if you,
I keep thinking of back to Ingebrigtsen, right? I think that dude has earned the right to be a little bit cocky, because and do we think that he's cocky because we're jealous of what? So this is a whole psychology talk, right? Do we think he's cocky because we're jealous of what he's accomplished and is able to accomplish? And so I think kind of the same way, my freshman year of college, I probably had no business talking about qualifying to nationals and all of those things. I wasn't that good at that point. But I made some of those statements knowing full well that I was willing to put the work in. And all the guys on the team saw was that I was this injured, not super fast. I hadn't done anything at the conference level, but I wanted to do all of the stuff at the conference level, but I also wanted more than that. Like, that was part of the reason that I chose the school and the coach and wanted to run for Holman, because he had coached national champs, and he told me flat out, I think you can be a national champ at some point in time. I believed him, and that was the goal that I was going for, you know, and so I think that is part of it. Everybody viewed me as really cocky for saying those things, but I eventually became an All-American. I eventually became a multiple-time, you know, national qualifier. I was leading the nation my senior year in the 1500 and qualified in 2 other events. And like at some point in time, I'd gotten to the point where, man, I was putting myself in a conversation that if I have the right day, I can go and do that.
absolutely.
And I think kind of wrapping up the, like, on that level, like on the national level, like how do you actually handle those moments? I think back to like the Hastings story you just told, and like the races I've been in, is at some point you have to humanize everybody else around you too. That anything can happen, and like for your benefit or not for your benefit, like anything can happen. I think about nationals last year, the supposed to be national champion from indoor previous year, Grace, got food poisoning, and we were all waiting for her in the tent to run the prelim, and she never showed up. And all of a sudden there was a spot open for the national champ. Like anything could happen. Or otherwise, before that, it was everybody in their head already had this idea of like race for second, and like it's anything can happen, and then you don't know everybody else's training. You don't know if they put more work in or less work in than you. So you just have to trust in like what you've done. Like you know what you've done, so you have to put more of your thought into what you've done versus like what everybody else has done. Because you don't know. I know with Strava and different things like that, it's easy to get caught up in it. That's part of the reason I do avoid Strava, is I like to like build the confidence in the sense that I know what I've done and I don't have to worry about comparing it to anybody else. Like we've talked about comparison and different things, but it is not, I don't want to be naive that like other people haven't put the work in, but I don't have to worry about doubting my work if I'm not consumed in other people's work. Like I spend that energy more so like
You can only control what you are doing.
Yeah. So
That's
like I think about too when you reflect on what you've done in your best performances, how often you run a PR and you're like, man, I felt so good, or oh, there was more left in there. Like sometimes you are absolutely gassed, but then there's some PRs you run where you're like, oh, I could have gone more a third lap. Like, I had a little bit more in the tank. And trying to remind yourself of that on those lines, too, of, like, you know that about yourself that nobody else knows, of how many times you've gotten in the line and been like, yeah, their PR might be faster, but I know my PR, I had an extra 3 seconds in there somewhere.
Yeah.
That, like, there is more. And feeding yourself that a little bit.
Elise Cranny talked a lot about seeing other people's workouts and like seeing some of the Ethiopian and the Kenyans workouts, and she's like, oh my gosh, at first she was like, I couldn't do that. If I can't do those, how could I ever? And then she's like, but wait a minute, my workouts are really impressive too, and I'm doing some things, and I'm doing things that I've never done before, and it doesn't matter what they're doing, I just have to get myself as ready as I can, and then let's go race it out when the Olympics come around, and we'll figure it out from there. And I think that's a pretty healthy and good way to view it too, that yeah, there's always going to be other people out there that are really, really fit, but you don't know how those workouts fit into the pieces of what they're trying to do, and they're not on the same regiment that you are, and that doesn't necessarily, just because you can run a really good workout doesn't necessarily mean that you can go win a national championship either. Like Kelly, I stood next to Phoebe's coach, who was like the 204 woman at the particular point in time in Boston, and she was like, yeah, I just hope Phoebe can hold on for tomorrow. The only reason she goes out this hard is because she doesn't like having people running behind her. And I told Kelly that, and I was like, here's your blueprint, like if you want to try to beat her. And at Outdoor Nationals, Esther went out with her, and she freaked out coming down the home stretch and actually walked in the last like 30 meters of the race.
No kidding.
And it was all because Esther was right on her, and she didn't know what to do, and she literally had a panic attack at the end of the race. And so Esther Seeland becomes the next big thing at the Division III level and ends up winning a bunch of national championships. But that was her big coming out party, was beating Phoebe, who was the multiple time defending national champ, who was the next one after Emily Richards, but it ended up becoming Esther because Esther figured out how to push her buttons a little bit. So once again, you just never know what's going to happen if you put yourself into a position and take some chances. Maybe you're not fit enough to go out in 59 seconds through the first quarter, but if you can just hold on and she starts to fade, that might be your opening to just be able to do just enough to win.
And if you do fail, then you try something else next time.
Right, you're still going to be an All-American,
yeah.
and that'll be okay too.
Mm-hmm.
My last thoughts on like the staying calm on that level, or like conference level, whatever it is, like big race. I briefly at some point in my career went to like sports psychologist. We were trying to throw everything we could at figuring out mental hope, and he talked about doing what you couldn't. We flipped it both ways of how can you make your practice days more like your race days, and sometimes I've done more of how do I make my race days like my practice days. Like you talk about how do you go and succeed at a place that you're not familiar with.
Absolutely.
And it comes back to, again, those like routines and things of how can you make that environment the same, of collecting those things and taking it with you. So like I do my word maps before everything. That's my mental thing, is I write out a bunch of cue words, mental words, and visualize in that sense. And then when I go to national meet, I collect all of my good ones that like were effective, and I tape them all over my room. That I look at that for the next 3 days, and it's something that I've taken with me. And like, how can you continue to make those environments consistent?
Mm-hmm. So, the next thing I have on here, it kind of touches back on the failure aspect and having bad days and bad workouts. How can a runner or a racer or even just an athlete turn a failure or a bad race into a confidence build?
I think that's tough. I think that takes a ton of maturity. I think that takes practice. I think you need to continually, write down the 3 things that you got out of the workout. I think if you can come back to a routine where you're consistently building confidence even through bad workouts or bad races, there's always something positive that can come out of everything. You just got to find the silver lining. But once again, that takes a ton of maturity. It takes probably some leadership from other places, whether it be coaches or teammates or whatever. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I think sometimes the failing helps you figure out what you want, which then like helps you figure out what kind of confidence you need to build, or like where you're lacking confidence. It comes out you don't know until you know. So until you fail, and what you were thinking when you failed, you don't know was a lack of confidence or a gap in your confidence until it happens. So I think it can be used as like some wisdom to push you in the right direction of where you need to work.
I'm pulling over. Hold on. Continue.
And then, again, I don't know, I think about the journaling, like just finding ways to make yourself pull something out of it, even at the lows of, Coach usually brings it back to a point of, at the very least, life-wise, how can we learn how to get through something hard out of this? Like, at the lowest lows I feel like I've had, like, racing-wise, we go all the way down to the bottom of, okay, now how do we learn how to build out of something tough and get some confidence out of that? That the way you respond to it can be a way to create new confidence. Of, like, even in the lows, that, okay, you choose your next steps, and if you can dig yourself back out of that 4 weeks later, when you are at a better place, that is, like, 4 weeks of new confidence of, you know what, I was here, but now I'm here. So you might not have that, like, immediate gratification from it, but it's a choice opportunity to give yourself a huge jump of confidence, to be like, I've went from doing this to doing this, like a point A to point B timeline.
And so I sent this to Evie, I sent this to Anthony, I shot this out to a bunch of people. I was journaling the other night, and I wrote this down, and this was really profound to me. Evolution is the only option. Adversity is absolutely 100% inevitable. The degree of that adversity can vastly vary, but no matter what the goal you reach or what circumstance you find yourself in, you will find problems. With these problems, you have two options. 1, dwell on them and stay where you are, or 2, evolve. There's certainly a place for number 1, but staying there for too long is a recipe for disaster. No matter what the circumstance is, no matter what the problem is, no matter where you were at once in your life, you must evolve, because you can never go back to what once was, but you can and will create what is to come. And that philosophy for me comes from, Eby recommended the book to me. It was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And
you gotta put expletive
that mindset is that's what that entire book is about. It goes very in depth about, how to not give a fuck. And that mindset has been incredibly valuable for me. It's been something that it's basically changed my life in the last 4 months. And you definitely gave me your copy that was up there, unless you have another one.
Sure it's up here.
But
currently going through Coach's bookshelf to see if he can find it.
But I wrote that down the other night, and I reread that like 8 times.
Well, that fits this episode really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't believe you pulled that up, but I'm gonna pull up the quote I sent you or told you right when we actually walked in here. I was listening to it on the bike during my medium long run today. It was that is neither the future or the past weighs on you, but always the present. And I always say to him as well, this is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, really good book, totally recommend, but I always say to him, no matter how rich, no matter how fast, no matter how slow somebody is, everybody's present is the same, right? So the present moment you get to control no matter who you are and what you're doing. Everybody's present, everybody gets the present, and that's all equal, if that makes sense. And so I thought that just added to what you were saying.
And we were nerds sitting here like analyzing the quote, and I'm like, well, if you really, really want to get into it, your past was once your future. So your present is affecting both your past and your future. So like what you're doing in the present is that powerful. Like you can dig into that so much.
Because the whole thing with the whole thing with the Stoicism stuff is the focus on the moment.
Uh-huh.
So whenever you listen to the Stoicism stuff, especially in the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, you hear all about the present moment. And that and the one about like, no matter how rich somebody is, no matter how fortunate or unfortunate somebody is, everybody gets the present. So just rejoice in the present and focus on the present, if that makes sense. So I just thought that touched on what you were saying as well about the present moment and evolution in the present moment.
I want to interject a question here off of the like turning confidence into like experience and blah 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 for Coach. How do I want to phrase? Talking a little bit about, yes, it is helpful sometimes to rely on like other people. Like one of the confidence things I used to write was who believes in me. Like on the days I was struggling to believe who believes in me and believes in my goals for me. But like I know as a coach you have to struggle with that line sometimes of like, you can have confidence in us, but then the confidence in yourself. The difference sometimes of we've talked about how to get the confidence for yourself, but just as a coach trying to navigate that, you can have confidence in an individual, but trying to get them to have confidence in themselves.
So something that wording that I've changed in how I talk to you all is going from I'm proud of you to you should be proud of yourself. I will always be proud of all of you as long as you do your best, but trying to get you to remind yourselves that you should be proud of yourself. And so reminding all of you to be excited about all of the little wins and just trying to find those little wins and have those conversations with you all, I think is just really, really important. Because ultimately this all is to help build your confidence to become a stronger human being and be able to go out and do hard things and, you know, just be fun. Like, we're just supposed to be out there enjoying it. It is stressful at times. There is stress that comes with it, but ultimately it's the stress you're putting on yourself. You know, and I try to have that conversation. People will have a bad race and I'm like, do your parents not love you anymore? You know, and well, no, of course they do. Well, then what are you worried about? Like, what is the problem here? You know, and kind of trying to put things back into perspective of what we're really trying to get. Is this answering?
Yeah, I mean, I just think about how many times I've sat in this office and we've been trying to decide, like, national meet stuff or whether or not I can run a time or what things look like, and you've been like, Hope, I know you can do it, but how do I get you to know you can do it? And, like, the frustration of that, I'm sure at moments, but, like, I don't know, but yes.
Well, I just talked to the recruit today and the mom, and she was like, oh, what's your degree? And I was like, well, I have an undergrad in physical education and my master's in coaching. I said, but ultimately I probably should have gotten a master's degree in psychology and then nutrition. And those should have been the 2 degrees that I ended up getting, because those are the things that I really probably would have helped me the most, because my, as interesting as it was, my history in women's and sports and my biomechanics classes, you know, or sport law class, don't help me as much to help you all reach your full potential as I think having a degree in psychology or sports psychology would have done. And so that's why I try to read as much as I do to help you guys through some of those things and try to learn new tricks and tactics. The other point I always bring up is throwing darts. I'm constantly just throwing darts. I'm trying to find the dart that's going to hit the bullseye for each individual person, because what worked for Kelly Brennan doesn't necessarily work for Alyssa Lochner, doesn't necessarily work for Hope Murphy or Hastings Merrick or Eduardo Vasquez or Daniel Sorensen or Javier Ceja or Dylan Heck. And like, you just have to keep trying and keep doing different things. And I think a lot of it comes back to, from my perspective, is building a strong enough relationship with you all that I can have really difficult conversations and it's not you take offense to it. Like, it's maybe you need some time to digest what I say and take it all in, but realizing that, okay, this is something I do need to work on.
A relationship that has influence,
Yeah.
but, like, not the unconditional influence kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, that was my question.
I want to kind of shift gears to I personally wrote out this question, and this one is basically me asking it, but I'm sure you guys will find it helpful as well. I've had this problem a lot in the past. I still have it. How do you maintain confidence when you get hurt?
Just consistency, just continuing to be consistent with your training. I think a lot of times people get hurt and they don't think that cross training is doing as much and so on and so forth. And it does. And whether you feel like it is or not, you just have to continue to put the time in. And the tough part is that we're not passionate about cycling, or we're not passionate about swimming, even though Dylan's going to complete 20 miles in the pool at some point in time. You know,
Yeah, 3 hours on the bike was bad.
I think that it does become more difficult to put time in these other sports that we're just not as passionate about. But reminding yourself that you are doing it for a greater good, that you can come back. You know, the Stoics talk about alive time and dead time, and which path are you going to choose? Are you going to Are you going to choose to make this the best that you can? And you know, most injuries come from some sort of a musculature imbalance or a weakness in some way, shape, or form. And so, are you going to actually figure out how to fix that? Or are you just going to, oh, whatever, man, I'll just, whenever I'm healed, I'll just come back. And then you're in worse shape than when you started, and then that doesn't help your confidence either, right? And so you just have to continue to build. And you almost have to start to build that that cockiness from I'm putting in all these hours, and just truly believing in what you're doing. Because if you truly believe in what you're doing, you know, coming back to Elise Cranny, she might not run the same workouts as the Ethiopians or the Kenyans, but she believes that she can put herself in a place to win a global medal. I'm sure Grant Fisher looks at some of the other workouts and thinks, holy cow, those guys are running really fast. But so is he, right? And so plenty of top level athletes have been injured at some point in time, and you know, they come back bigger, better, stronger than before, and so taking confidence in that too. But I think it's really just the consistency of everything and putting the time in. That's I don't know, kind of my motto in life is just continue to grind.
Yeah.
Like no matter what I'm doing, like recruiting is really freaking hard, but if I put the time in, I will get rewarded for that. And the harder I work in that, the more rewards I see in that. And it's the same with running mileage and cross training and all that kind of stuff too.
I think you have to like buy in and believe in it. It's the big
Yep.
piece of it. Is like buy in and believe what you're doing matters. And even if it doesn't, like at moments, like you just have to continually like buy into like every minute counts, and whether that's logging it so you can see your minutes like accumulating, that great. Like see the stuff add up to a point you like can't deny it. And I think there's also a piece of grace with it that when you transition back to the track, that like if it's not exactly what you expect it to be, that you don't build it off of something that's gonna crumble. Like give yourself a chance to readapt to running on the ground. That I think that's where people struggle is that like I don't want to say overpromising, under-delivering of like, yes, the cross training is important, doing all that work's important, but like to have a little bit of perspective that it's not going to be perfect right away when you step on the track, that you don't let all of your confidence crumble in those 2 weeks of like readjusting. That I feel like is like the pattern you see a lot of. Then they throw everything away because that 2 weeks of running for the first time, that first workout's not perfect. Then they like, well, everything I did was a waste, and like throw it all away. So like buying into the fact of like that is an important base, but then like it gets you a step closer to the next phase kind of thing.
Yep. No, that's you hit the nail right on the head.
I am currently I have a stress fracture in my fibula for context. So this is something I'm currently struggling with, and I am incredibly passionate about this. So I'm going to try to keep this short, but I have really, really figured out the mindset that works with me. I think that my confidence is even greater than it was a week or two before I got injured. Like I've gotten to a point where I'm excited to get on that bike and just hurt. Like it's as soon as I got injured, I had the mindset of like, okay, this is a new challenge. This is something I have never experienced before. I've been blessed enough to not have a serious injury since early in my high school track career. So I went in with a mindset of this is going to be a challenge, and what makes great athletes great is the ability to adapt to those challenges, and going back to the quote I said earlier, evolve and become something greater. So when you are faced with the task of having to cross-train and having to do something that you hate, something that you've never done before, that is what can make you great. So throw all times out the window. Throw your past self out the window. This is going back to the quote that he just said, you know. Your past self doesn't matter. It's gone. Forever it's gone. You're never going to be able to be your past self again. But you right now have the ability to shape yourself into who your future can be. The decisions that you make right now are the difference between you, this is going to be a very harsh way, you being a bum on the street and you being president of the United States. You know, like, everything that you do from this point into the future is determining your future. So, if you go into the bike room thinking, oh yeah, whatever, like I'll just start trying hard again when I'm healthy, then you're gonna have a terrible return to athletics. You're gonna race awful. But if you have if you keep your routine and you're still getting up early in the morning and keeping your eating habits and evolving as a person, then throw times out the window, because your times are not gonna be good when you come back. And I've come to terms with that, but it's not about keeping your times consistent, because those will drop and come back up. It's about keeping your mindset consistent. Do not let yourself waver in your mental routine and waver in the things that you're doing,
Like, Anthony, I think about, like, my past fall. I don't think I made any giant fitness gains doing the cross training I was doing. Not that it wasn't beneficial, but I didn't do anything huge and monumental.
Yeah.
But, like, I went from barely being able to swim to swimming for an hour and 20 minutes. Like, I learned to do something hard in that sense. I went from someone who only biked recovery stuff to I biked 2 hours and 45 minutes on a road bike. I was scared of road bikes. Like, just learning to do hard things and taking something out of that almost has more value, I feel like, than the fitness, piece of it. I mean, the fitness is important, and I'm not saying I didn't get anything out of it, but it's the small pieces you can take out of it, and the gratitude, and then the small wins, like practicing the small win stuff.
All right, I gotta get Goose. We gotta get into the rapid fire.
Let's get in the rapid
questions.
fire. Yeah, because I gotta go to the bathroom too, so let's get it done.
These will be real rapid fire.
Other than Bolden Wallace, the first two were recommended from our Instagram. So if you guys aren't following us on Instagram, follow us on Instagram, because we post up like question suggestions that we can do and topic suggestions, and you guys can have some say in that. So if you're not following us on Instagram, go follow us, relaxandfast.pod. But our first one was given to us actually by Sam, and it was other than Bolden Wallace. Oh wait, no, it was given to us by Coach Ladd. Sorry. Other than Bolden Wallace, what is your favorite track venue, Coach?
I've been thinking a lot about this. Indoors, it's the University of Nebraska. Lincoln is by far and away my favorite. It's just such a cool venue. It has so much history and tradition in there. It actually has an original poster from the Berlin Olympics that's worth like thousands of dollars. It's bolted to the wall. And so that would be my favorite indoor facility that I've been to. I don't know. Outdoors is tough. Like, and I know this is going to be a really bad take for most of the people in this room, but I am very partial to the Mount Union track. Like, I put a lot of time and sweat and energy into that stadium. And so, just for me, like, I have a lot of good memories inside of that track and in that oval. Obviously the old Hayward Field is a kind of a lame. I mean, it's a really cool venue and all of that stuff, but I mean that's almost too easy of an answer. There are facilities I want to go see. Like I want to go see a lot of the Oslo and some of those places. I think some of the old time stadiums that are on the Diamond League. I would love to go. I'm very jealous of Charlotte for the places that she got to go. So.
Indoor easy. It is Coach's Ladd's Virginia Beach Sports Center. It's a beautiful raised banked track, beautiful facility. Shout out to him. Great memories there too. As a national runner-up, it was a fun meet. Again, a good person there running this stuff. But outdoor, I hate that I can't say our track because I love our track.
And I do too. Just FYI, I do love our track.
That one is my
favorite. We did say other than BW.
Yeah, that one is my favorite. But outside of it, I would say Spire for outdoor. I like I don't know, something like it's not huge, overwhelmingly stadium, but it has a really cool feel to it, and where it's located and the way it like opens up and you can see the throws and just a really cool feel to that one.
I think I'm gonna keep mine to local because I think. Obviously, I'm going to say Boston for indoor and Penn for outdoors because I got to go there for nationals. But my personal favorites, just from like my local experiences, I absolutely love Spire's indoor facility. I was blessed to be able to do a league there in high school. It was incredible. I love the atmosphere. Incredible atmosphere. And then outdoor track, dude, Brunswick.
Brunswick's great. Oh my gosh, I was going to say Brunswick.
Brunswick has an incredible outdoor track.
Brunswick's good.
The stadium is massive. The energy during we run our conference meet and district meet there normally, and the energy was ridiculous.
You know what's underrated?
For a high school meet, it was ridiculous.
The underrated one's Avon Lake.
Okay, that's
I
a
don't know if
terrible
you've ever been to
take.
Avon
That's a
Lake.
terrible
It's
take.
always sucky, but the atmosphere during the 3200 my sophomore year of high school was crazy. But
You
I would-
guys need to branch out.
Well, for
Well,
me,
I'm keeping my
okay,
vote.
I haven't had the outdoor season.
To Brunswick.
Yeah. I haven't had the outdoor season. So, for indoor, I didn't run there, but Ashland was a cool facility. I've always been a Spire guy. I've always liked Spire. So, those probably be my top two. I actually really like for outdoor, Brunswick's really good, Avon Lake's really good. I haven't really been to a lot of outdoor tracks. I've seen the outdoor track at MIT. That one looks like awesome. But I haven't really been to a lot of outdoor tracks. I haven't had a college outdoor track season, so I'm not really going to speak on that too much. But the next question I have, this one is from Sam. What PR or race are you most proud of and why?
Oh, this one is so hard.
Do you guys have yours ready?
I have ours ready. We're going to cut the other rapid
Ooh,
fire for
actually, I
time,
don't know. Who frick?
I think.
I would honestly need to think about this a little bit more.
Oh, I have mine.
I have mine.
Yeah, I can go ahead.
We'll go. Okay, I'll go first. GCC 2023. There's a picture of me in front of Dylan. I beat him.
Dude, he smoked me
I
in
smoked
that
him.
race.
I had a good day. Really,
I
really
PR'd
good day.
too, and he beat me.
That is where one of my fastest races. It was at home. It was in Strongsville. It was one of my fastest races I've ever ran. Just got out. I just had a good time the whole day. Like before the race, I wasn't nervous. I was just laughing, having a great time, and then I just went out there and freaking beat Dylan.
Well, I didn't know him.
We didn't really
at this
know
time.
each other.
And I remember I just see this little guy passing me. I was like,
Alright.
I'm not losing to this guy. I told someone I'm
lost
not
to him.
losing to him. He
You
gapped me.
lost to him, and now
He
he's on the
killed
same
me.
team as you.
My favorite PR is surprisingly, like, all of my PRs are really, really, really special to me. But my 5K PR, that was it. Our first meet of the outdoor season last year was coming off of bronchitis. This was the peak of my mental, like, I was in terrible mental state. Terrible mental state. And somehow I went out there and I started fading. We were trying to break 15. My PR at the time was like 15:21. And I was on pace. I started fading. Garrick and Carter were both passing. Mixdorf was way ahead, and I was starting to fade out. And there was some little voice in my head that was just like, just go. And I was everything on my legs. I was lactic like a mile into that race. So I followed him, and I got back onto Mixdorf and ended up running 15:07. And I still look back to that race. I'm like, I don't know how I did that in the mental, because then, like a week after that, I blew up and ran 2:08 in the 800, and
I hate picking favorite anythings. And I think like it's all broken down in my head thinking about this within context of this episode of like confidence and what I pull from different races is so different. Of like my favorite school record is my 10K because it's something really hard I did. Like, but I don't know if it was my favorite race or PR, but like I think breaking 2:10 for the first time was like awesome. I think my favorite race is I think it's my outdoor 15. I think it was just such a fun race, and like it played into exactly how I race. It just was a perfect setup. But then like I'm most proud of my national runner-up accomplishment. Like I don't know if that's my favorite race, but like I think my favorite race was the 15 my sophomore year when I got third. I don't know. It's all different. I don't know. I pull different things.
Yeah, mine are. So my All-American race, like, it wasn't the perfect race by any stretch of the imagination. I wish I could go back and run it again and do things a little bit differently, but I still accomplished the goal that I had set out to accomplish, and it still, to me, is a really big day and deal that I did that. Running 152 at Kent and beating a bunch of, like, D1 scholarship guys that were talking all this crap before the race, and this little D3 guy comes out of nowhere, and I smacked a lot of them pretty good, like, and that was a really big breakthrough race for me. The 3:45.30 from Hillsdale is my PR. Once again, that's the fastest I had ever run in my life, and so that's a really big one. And then Hope will understand this, but the Thanksgiving Day race where I finally won the home run for the homeless, like I honestly, I think that was probably the best mental race that I had ever put together, and so it's one of the ones I'm probably most proud of, and it probably has the least meaning to anybody else outside of the crew that runs that race.
Would you get a free turkey for that at the end?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, and so much more. And so,
I think about it wasn't my favorite race, but like what time am I most proud of, I guess, and I think about like the mile I ran with Alyssa and like Coach Metzger.
Yeah.
It was like a 4:48 mile, and it's like probably my most impressive like time on paper. But I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I think about it a lot.
yeah.
Oh, I said my favorite PR. I need to quickly. I want to say my favorite race. Conferences this year in the mile. That was incredible. It was
Oh, that was a good race.
almost exactly what I had visualized for months leading up to that. Me and Sam being able to cross the finish line in second and third, and then hopefully we'll be able to cross in first and second here, conference time.
Yeah.
Get running on the ground here, but.
Crazy.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode. We'll catch you guys next week for Relaxed and Fast. Give us 5 stars on Spotify if you're listening there. Like, subscribe on YouTube, or just show us some support. Follow Goose on Strava. The dude's running all the time. We have an interview up on our Instagram about it, and feel free to follow us on Instagram as well. And we will see you guys in the next one.
Peace.